Fisher 13 and Rachel Fisher 15 have been added to the many kids with links to the FLDS who cannot be found currently. In part 1, we went through a brief history of the group itself to get that base understanding, and now we're going to get into what's been going on.
He wanted all the children, especially, to be consecrated back to the church.
Jeffs is currently serving a life sentence for crime stemming from the church's practice of underage and polygamist marriages. Authorities saying 24 of Jeff's 78 wives were underage.
Again, this is a rough subject. If it's not one that you can handle today, that is totally fine. I'll catch you at the next one. Where I left you, we were talking about the Yearning for Zion raids, and this was widely, and even by the state, understood to have been very botched. They said they didn't realize how many kids were going to be there, and they ended up transporting about 450 children. That's how many were in the proceedings against them, and they were taken to places that were very uncomfortable. They weren't used to the food that they were being fed, so the children got very, very sick. Not to mention, the police went in on a tip that was later proven to be false. Now, of course, law enforcement did need to intervene, but the importance of doing it properly cannot be understated here, because then, just like the raids that we spoke about in part 1, this is now used just to scare the crap out of people. One of the reasons for so many children being there is, again, this repeated pattern of behavior, because they would determine XYZ get to go to Zion, and a lot of times the parents were not included in that, and they would wake up by some accounts in the middle of the night and their kids were just gone, and they would later find out that they were at this place in Texas or at another compound. This raid is now called the Attack on Zion, or When Zion Was Under Siege, as evidence in this book that actually explains it from the perspective of the FLDS, not us. This was given to me last summer when I was in Short Creek. It's very informational in that you can see their thought processes, and a lot of the information in this book comes from their own archives that none of us would really ever have any chance of accessing. However, I've spent the better part of a year trying to figure out how to cover this and still don't have an answer. These people are moved to compounds all over the country. We're talking North Dakota, South Dakota, and other countries, Mexico, Canada, Arizona, Montana, Utah, of course, and just so many other places. Several of the compounds have been seized over the years due to judgments, and Warren actually forbids people to respond to any kind of judgments, and that is actually how Short Creek is no longer primarily FLDS. A documentary I would recommend if you really want to understand kind of the dynamics of that town now, because even now with these reports about these kids, news sites are reporting, well, Short Creek, that's the hub, but it's not. They realize they're going to get caught there, and so they've moved all over the place and lost the access to the UEP Trust and the access to their property, because Warren won't let anybody answer lawsuits, which means that they get a lot of default judgments. If you want to understand that dynamic a little more, strongly recommend the documentary Keep Sweet. Now, this is different than Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey. That's on Netflix. This is on Discovery Plus and talks a lot about the trusts, all of that stuff, and why the town is no longer, as the news is reporting, a hub for the FLDS. The FLDS still living within the town are actually working with groups that are helping them to do the paperwork so that they can stay in their homes. But for the most part, they refuse to sign the lease agreements and pay the $100 to stay where they were at, because Warren told them that they are not allowed to. After 14 years of fighting, the Lost Boys and the people who had left and the people who had been hurt, the young women who were forced to marry people when they were children, and so many people that were forced out of this group got their town back. Now I know what you're saying. Didn't we just see Sam Bateman come out of Short Creek? Well, the kicker on that one is he's not FLDS. They are part of the Bateman group, which is the same beliefs. However, he convinced members of the FLDS, some, not a lot, he convinced them that Warren had actually passed away in prison and given them to him. So within Short Creek, he was running a very similar thing, but the FLDS group didn't want anything to do with him because they considered him to be a false prophet. Control of the town being different isn't to say that the same problems aren't happening. It's just a little bit different, right? Because with the Bateman group, they were reported hundreds of times, and the cops said they were trying to facilitate a relationship with the community, and they ignored hundreds of reports. They actually finally ended up getting caught because Dr. Christine Marie told Samuel Bateman, hey, I want to make a documentary about you, because she saw what was going on. And he was so sure of himself, he let her film him. I was at the trial. There was a girl who was testifying who had been married to Sam for 5 years, and she was 14. Now, I'm going to say this next part without trying to get really, really angry, but I'm trying to impress upon you the seriousness of the lack of movement and help. of the situation. So, you remember that picture of the trailer and Sam Bateman and all that stuff, right, from 2022? I bet you didn't know that he was actually out on bail because he had already been charged because of the evidence that was sent, but they decided to give him bail. So when he got out, he went and picked up all his wives, got the trailer, and went and got all the kids from safe houses and disappeared with them. If those cops in Flagstaff had not seen those hands coming out of the back of the trailer, who knows where they would be? Sam's tactics actually loop back around to the edicts that Warren was making, his prophecies, all of that stuff, because Sam said, oh, it's okay for us to get married and have babies now, which Warren said that they couldn't do, but that has been lifted, and a lot of people don't realize that. Warren's prophecies have been numerous because he's just sitting in an empty room trying to figure out how to control people. He has declared that the children need to be brought back into the fold, which has people very, very scared in a very Jonestown kind of way. He's also issued edicts that there were seed bearers. There were only 15 men who were allowed to get anyone pregnant, and their husbands actually had to watch while this happened. However, that has since been lifted. Marriages are okay now, and he wants people to have as many babies as possible. Warren Jeff's nephew was another of the people who was caught with a child. Now, this child was not his child and was a 10-year-old girl. They were found in North Dakota. He is serving 5 years for his crime. Parents of these children are people who have often left the FLDS or are in some kind of trouble or something like that, and this is very common. They'll even reassign families to different people. These parents have done everything in their power. They have contacted everyone, and they just need help finding their kids, and they need people to care. Rachel and Alan's mom was awarded full custody after a lengthy legal battle with their father, which is important to note. Warren refuses to let people do these things, these legal things, unless it is to get children. She was awarded sole custody, at which time she started noticing people circling her house and going to her work. She had one other child who disappeared previously, and this makes 3 of them that are just gone. They are believed to be in Trenton, Utah. Children were last seen in Montview, Idaho before they disappeared. Anyone with any information or sightings is strongly encouraged to contact the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. That is it for this one. I just hope from the bottom of my soul that these kids are found, and this is also my plea to federal authorities to do something, anything. This cannot keep going on. I hope you guys have a good day. Except the federal authority. You don't have a good day.